Now, I wasn't going to go ahead and talk about the iPhone 5S in the middle part of 2023, but we actually did get some changes and some improvements with this phone within the last, I guess, couple of months, which is honestly pretty crazy. So we're going to have to talk about this thing one more time probably. So let's go and see how the iPhone 5S holds up in the middle part of 2023. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is I would not recommend buying this phone, but the big improvement is actually within the software, which we'll get into in a second. First of all, with the body, still has that 4-inch IPS panel. Nothing has changed with this. It's pretty much the exact same thing that we had even since day one, which is I'm not complaining about. I think it's a pretty decent thing this iPhone had going for it. We're still getting Touch ID on the front, first iPhone to bring Touch ID, fingerprint sensor, we have camera on the front. Still a decent phone for the most part, not the first phone I'd recommend people to buy, but it's still a good phone nonetheless. We're getting the lightning port and the headphone jack on the bottom of this phone, which is great. On the back, we're getting the standard aluminum back, two kind of glass shards at the top and the bottom, as well as that camera on the back too, which is honestly very, very nice. So on the outside, I would still say it holds up decently well. It's not the best looking phone anymore, but it definitely still looks very nice for how old this phone looks. So in terms of that, I would give the outside probably more of a thumbs up than a thumbs down. Now, in terms of the camera setup, this phone has an 8 megapixel standard camera on the back and has a 1.2 megapixel camera on the front. Now, with this type of camera, what I'll tell you is, I do feel like with this type of phone, Apple did a pretty good job. You know, they did a 1080p 30 frames per second camera on the back, 720p camera on the front. And the thing with this type of phone to remember is that it's an old phone. You know, it's an old phone with an old camera. And with this type of phone, I mean, you're not getting 4K at 60 on the back, no multiple camera setups, but it got the job done, and I think that's a good thing going for it. You know, it's an okay phone at best in terms of the camera, but for how old this phone is, we do have to give it some credit. But we all know nobody should be using this camera phone anymore unless they really, really have to. And that's kind of all I have to say about this type of camera as of right now. Now, in terms of the software, this phone, I think, did end up getting another iOS 12 update this year, which is pretty crazy. You never think that a phone like this is still even kind of getting support, and it kind of is. So that's a really, really big thing to keep in mind here. It's not getting like that next version of iOS, but it is still getting some versions of software, and I do think that is a really nice thing going on for this type of phone. So that in and of itself is a really fascinating thing going on with this phone in and of itself. Now on top of that, performance-wise, this phone's performance really isn't that good anymore. I think we all kind of know this. It has that Apple A7 chip on the back, you know, inside of it. It has 1 gigabyte of RAM, and that's basically what's going on with it. You know, it's definitely not that great of a performing phone anymore. We all kind of know this, but that's kind of expected when you are getting a phone like this, that it's not going to be that great of a performing device anymore. But it can still kind of hang in there with some certain applications. Like if you're going in and if you're using certain apps like Snapchat and Instagram and Twitter, like you might be okay, but definitely if you try to go up a notch, it's not going to be that amazing. So keep that in mind. But regardless, it's still a decent performing phone from what I kind of have used it for. But it's not a phone I would recommend people to buy and use. I'm just thinking about how old this phone is and how it kind of holds up from that perspective. So to kind of sum up this video, what I'll tell you is, again, I would not recommend anyone using this type of phone. It makes zero sense at all for people to use this phone at all, but it is kind of fascinating that this phone is still kind of getting software support. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.